Like everyone sees the miracle, but no one sees the man holding his breath through it all. That's Jonathan Roumie right now. The man the world knows as Jesus from The Chosen, the calm, gentle, miracle-working Son of God has been carrying something far heavier than most people realize. Because what started as the role of a lifetime has slowly become a burden that's bleeding into every corner of his real life. And lately, it's becoming clearer that Jonathan Roumie is just tired of being Jesus. It's strange, isn't it? How playing Jesus, a role that changed his life, has also become the very thing that's draining it. When The Chosen first began, Jonathan was just grateful to be working again. He had prayed for direction, surrendered everything, and then this miracle happened. The world saw him as chosen, blessed, touched by divine timing. But behind the smiles, there's a quieter truth. Portraying Christ day after day isn't peaceful. It's exhausting. Jonathan has said many times that this isn't just acting for him, it's a spiritual mission. Every word, every look, every moment he spends on set, he tries to carry the full weight of who Jesus was. That kind of commitment might sound beautiful, but imagine trying to live that way non-stop. Imagine the emotional pressure of people expecting you to be Jesus, even after the cameras stop rolling. That's where Jonathan's real struggle begins. He's talked before about how people approach him in airports, on streets, in churches, crying, confessing, asking for prayers, as if they're standing in front of the real thing. And while he's deeply humbled, he's also human. There are days he just wants to fade into a crowd, have a coffee, laugh about nothing. But the robe never really comes off. He carries the expectation of holiness everywhere. Fans mean well, but for him, every handshake comes with an invisible reminder: you can't mess up. You represent something sacred. It's a heavy crown to wear when you're just a man trying to live a normal life. And then there's the emotional toll of filming itself. Season after season, the scripts get heavier, closer to the pain, closer to the cross. By the time they started shooting season 6 in Italy, Jonathan admitted he was spiritually and physically drained. He said he lost nearly half his muscle mass during the crucifixion scenes, not just from the physical strain but from how deeply he internalized it. He lived in prayer between takes, trying to stay grounded. But the silence between scenes wasn't peace, it was exhaustion. You could see it in his face, the way the light left his eyes for just a second longer than usual. He wasn't just acting anymore. He was living that agony. And when the camera stopped, it didn't instantly go away. Even his co-stars have noticed the change. They've spoken about how Jonathan isolates more during filming, spending long hours alone in reflection. He's admitted that he feels this overwhelming responsibility to get it right, to honor the story of Jesus in a way that doesn't disappoint anyone: God, the fans, the crew. But that kind of weight is crushing. Because no matter how perfect he tries to be, he's still flesh and blood. He still doubts. He still gets angry, tired, impatient. And that's where the line between the man and the Messiah starts to blur dangerously. It's not just about long filming days or physical exhaustion. It's about the constant spiritual battle that comes with the role. Jonathan once said he has to remind himself daily that he's not Jesus, that he's portraying him. That might sound simple, but imagine millions of people seeing your face as the face of Christ. It changes how you move, how you speak, how you think. It's not a costume anymore, it's an identity that the world projects onto you, whether you want it or not. And that's why, lately, people close to the production say he's been quieter, more withdrawn. Some describe it as a kind of holy fatigue, a burnout, that comes from carrying too much divinity on mortal shoulders. But it's not just exhaustion, it's fear too. Fear of letting people down. Fear of saying the wrong thing in an interview and having it misinterpreted. Fear that the spiritual experience people find through The Chosen might somehow be tied to him personally. Because Jonathan knows the danger of fame and faith. He knows the line between worshiping God and idolizing a man can get blurred fast. And when the man looks like Jesus, that line disappears completely. So when you see those rare moments where he breaks character, where the smile fades and his voice trembles, it's not weakness. It's the reality finally leaking through the image. Jonathan Roumie, the actor, is tired. Not tired of God, not tired of faith, but tired of being Jesus for everyone, all the time. And that's what makes this next chapter of his story so compelling. Because what happens when the man who plays Jesus needs saving himself? See, when people think about The Chosen, they see this miracle project that came out of nowhere. The first ever multi-season story about Jesus told from a perspective that feels real, human, emotional. But what they don't see is the personal cost that came with it, especially for Jonathan Roumie. From the moment The Chosen exploded worldwide, his life was never the same again. He became a symbol not just of faith, but of what people imagine holiness looked like in human form. And that's the part that slowly started eating at him. Because when your job is to be Jesus in front of millions, how do you ever truly be yourself again? Jonathan's always been open about his faith, about how much prayer and surrender shaped his journey. But somewhere along the way, his quiet devotion got tangled up in the expectations of others. People stopped seeing him as Jonathan, the man who once prayed for a miracle, when he had nothing left, and started seeing only the character. He talked about how even his friends began treating him differently. Like he carried this constant sacredness around him that made normal moments awkward. He couldn't joke, couldn't relax, couldn't just be another guy in the room. Everywhere he went, the energy shifted, because when Jesus walks in, people stand a little straighter, talk a little softer, and stare a little longer. And that's not fame, that's pressure disguised as reverence, behind closed doors. That kind of pressure can break you. There were nights during filming when Jonathan said he'd go back to his room and just sit in silence. No phone, no TV, no distractions, just him trying to breathe again. Trying to remember who he was before all this. He once mentioned how hard it was to shake off certain scenes, especially during the later seasons when the story turned darker, betrayal, suffering, death. He said that those moments didn't leave him when the director called cut. They stayed in his body, in his dreams, in his prayers. Sometimes he'd wake up feeling the same ache he had to portray on screen the day before. And that's when he realized this wasn't just acting anymore. It was transformation, and it was costing him his peace. And yet, he never complained publicly. He just kept showing up. He'd wake up early, pray, prepare, and walk into those sets carrying both his faith and his fatigue like two heavy crosses. People saw the glow, the grace, the humility, but they didn't see the exhaustion underneath it all. The truth is, The Chosen became more than just a TV show for him. It became a ministry. But no one ever said ministries don't hurt. Jonathan has said that even though it's the greatest honor of his life, it's also the hardest thing he's ever done. Because every time he steps into that role, he's not just telling a story, he's reliving pain, sacrifice, and love so deep that it reshapes him every season. And as season 6 rolled around, the season that leads to the crucifixion, the pressure intensified. The emotional preparation for those scenes was brutal. He described how he isolated himself from everyone for days, barely talking, barely eating, trying to prepare his mind and heart for what was coming. Imagine being asked to portray the single most sacred moment in all of Christianity, and doing it knowing millions will study every tear, every breath, every glance you make. He said it himself, "God, don't let me screw this up." That's not just a line, that's a prayer born out of fear, reverence, and exhaustion all at once. But maybe the hardest part isn't the physical pain or emotional strain. It's the loneliness. Because how do you connect with people when everyone around you sees you as a saint? When every friendship, every conversation feels like it's filtered through this image of holiness? Jonathan has admitted that fame hasn't filled the void. He's still single, still searching, still praying for someone who can see him, not the character, not the symbol, just Jonathan. He once said he'd rather stay single forever than be with someone who doesn't share his faith, who doesn't understand the mission he's on. That's how deep his conviction runs. But conviction doesn't keep you warm at night. Conviction doesn't hold your hand after a long day of shooting. And sometimes you can feel that ache in his interviews, that quiet longing for something real, something human, something simple. The irony is painful. The man who brings Jesus to life for millions is struggling to hold on to his own. And lately, you can see the signs, the weariness in his eyes, the heaviness in his words. It's not that he's lost faith. It's that faith itself has become the battlefield. Every role has its breaking point, and maybe Jonathan's is getting close. Not because he doesn't love what he does, but because even the most faithful hearts can get tired. And right now, Jonathan Roumie isn't just playing a savior. He's trying to save himself. The thing about carrying something sacred is that it changes how people see you. But it also changes how you see yourself. And that's what's happening with Jonathan Roumie right now. He's been walking this line between being an actor and being a vessel for something divine. And after all these years, that line is almost gone. When he first started playing Jesus, it was simple. He was just grateful to have work, to finally feel like God had answered his prayer. But now, it's not just a job anymore. It's a calling that never turns off. Even when he's offset, he's still carrying the weight of the robe, the responsibility, the reverence. And sometimes, it's like he's forgotten where the role ends and where Jonathan begins. You can hear it in his interviews, that quiet exhaustion behind the faith-filled words. He talks about surrender, about trusting God, about being guided through it all. But you can feel something else too, a kind of heaviness, a kind of pain that doesn't fully go away. Because portraying Jesus isn't just about memorizing lines or performing miracles on screen. It's about embodying the emotions behind them, the suffering, the love, the loneliness. He once said he spends hours praying before filming some scenes, asking for strength, for wisdom, for peace. But how much strength can one man give before he runs out? And how long can someone live as a symbol of perfection when deep down, they're just tired of trying to be perfect? Jonathan's talked about how he sometimes breaks down after filming, how certain moments just leave him shattered. The Garden of Gethsemane, the Last Supper, the crucifixion, they're not just scenes for him. They're emotional avalanches. When he steps into those moments, he doesn't just act, he feels them. He carries that heartbreak home, sleeps with it, wakes up with it. And that's what most people don't see. They see the devotion, the grace, the peace, but not the cost of getting there. Because to portray Jesus truthfully, he has to go through pain that's not written in the script. Emotional pain, spiritual exhaustion. That deep emptiness that comes when you've given every piece of yourself to something greater. And there's nothing left to give, and it's not like the world gives him space to rest. The fame from The Chosen has only made the noise louder. Everywhere he goes, there's someone wanting something, a photo, a prayer, a moment of connection. And Jonathan gives it, every time, with the same soft smile. But each one of those moments takes something from him. Because people aren't just meeting an actor, they're meeting their Jesus. And when you're constantly surrounded by people looking at you with reverence, expecting holiness, it's easy to forget what normal feels like. There's no room for frustration, no space for mistakes. Every word he says is analyzed, every action recorded. It's a spotlight that never switches off, even when all he wants is to disappear for a while. That's why lately, you can sense this shift in him. This subtle pulling away from the world's noise. He's become quieter, more selective, choosing solitude over attention. He's not chasing interviews or publicity like before. He's retreating, recentering, trying to find Jonathan again under all the weight of Jesus. And it's not because he's ungrateful, far from it. He said countless times that this role changed his life, brought him closer to God, gave him purpose. But even purpose can become pressure when it's wrapped in divinity. Sometimes he just wants to be unseen, unheard, unneeded. Just a man in a room, breathing. The irony is almost poetic. The man portraying the most selfless figure in history is struggling to hold on to himself. It's like the closer he gets to representing divine perfection, the further he drifts from his own humanity. And that's not failure, that's the price of spiritual art. Because you can't touch something sacred without leaving a piece of yourself behind. And Jonathan's left so many pieces along the way that he's starting to wonder if there's enough left for him. Even his faith, as strong as it is being tested in new ways. He said that during filming, he has moments where he asks God, why me? Why this role? Why now? Not out of doubt, but out of exhaustion. Because it's one thing to serve. It's another to sacrifice. And this role, this calling, it's a daily sacrifice that never ends. It's draining and beautiful all at once. He's constantly torn between gratitude and grief, grateful for the purpose, grieving for the peace he lost. And that's why when people say, Jonathan Roumie is Jesus, they don't realize how heavy that sentence really is. Because to the world, it's admiration. But to him, it's a reminder of everything he's still carrying. It's almost haunting when you think about it. The man who helped millions reconnect with their faith through The Chosen is now quietly battling to protect his own. Jonathan Roumie's life has become this strange, fragile balance between holiness and humanity. Everywhere he goes, the world expects the calm, patient face of Jesus. But what happens when he's the one who needs saving? What happens when faith turns into fatigue, not because he's lost belief, but because he's poured too much of it out? That's the side of Jonathan most people never see. The version that sits alone after a long day of filming, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he's still enough. When the robe comes off, you can almost feel that tension in the way he talks about the crucifixion scenes from season 6. He called it the hardest experience of his life, both spiritually and physically. Shot in Italy under a burning sun, he said the exhaustion hit him in waves. He wasn't just portraying suffering, he was living it. Hours of hanging, shaking, whispering prayers between takes. His body bruised, his muscles fading, his soul trembling. He admitted he had to lean on prayer more than ever, saying, "There were days I didn't know if I could keep going. I just had to keep asking God for strength." That's not acting anymore. That's surrender. That's a man giving every last ounce of himself for something bigger than him. But when it's over, when the cameras stop and the silence returns, who helps him refill what he's poured out? Jonathan once mentioned that the deeper he goes into this role, the more he realizes how truly human Jesus was and how much pain comes with carrying divine love. And maybe that's what he's feeling now, that quiet, aching side of holiness that no one likes to talk about. The side that's lonely, misunderstood, and tired. The world loves the miracles, the light, the compassion, but not the isolation that comes with it. And for Jonathan, that isolation is real. Fame didn't bring him community. It brought distance. Because it's hard to be close to people who only see the image and not the man behind it. Even his spiritual life has changed in ways he never expected. Before The Chosen, his prayers were simple, thankful, personal, honest. Now, they're heavier, deeper, sometimes desperate. He prays for strength, for humility, for balance. But he's also admitted that there are days when it feels like too much. When he just wants to feel normal again. It's the kind of weariness that doesn't go away with rest or sleep. It's the kind that builds quietly over years of being needed, admired, depended on. Everyone draws inspiration from him, but who does he draw from? That's the kind of loneliness only a few people will ever understand, and yet, even in that loneliness, he still gives. He still prays with fans, attends church events, speaks about faith on interviews, and shows up like nothing's wrong. That's the power of conviction and also the danger of it. Because sometimes, when you keep giving, people forget you're human too. They think your strength is endless, your faith unshakable, your peace permanent. But Jonathan's peace is something he fights for daily. It's not gifted, it's earned, rebuilt, restored over and over again. And that's why, in his quiet moments, he's been turning to more personal prayers. Ones that ask not for miracles, but for stillness. One that he recently shared stood out. "O Jesus, meek and humble of heart, hear me. From the desire of being loved, deliver me. From the desire of being honored, deliver me. From the desire of being esteemed, deliver me." That prayer isn't about fame or validation. It's about release. It's the sound of a soul asking for peace after too many years of giving. The truth is, Jonathan isn't just tired of playing Jesus, he's tired of being seen as Jesus. Tired of the perfection everyone expects, tired of being strong all the time. Because when the world keeps calling you holy, it's hard to admit when you're hurting. And right now, he's learning that even faith needs space to breathe. Even saints have breaking points. The difference is, Jonathan doesn't complain about it, he transforms it. Every bit of exhaustion becomes part of the message, every tear becomes another lesson. It's as if God is still using him, not just to portray Jesus on screen, but to remind the world that faith isn't about never breaking. It's about trusting enough to be rebuilt. So when people ask, is Jonathan Roumie tired of being Jesus? The answer isn't just yes. It's deeper than that. He's tired, yes, but he's also transforming. He's learning that surrender doesn't mean quitting. It means knowing when to step back, breathe, and let God refill what the world has emptied. Because the truth is, no one can play Jesus forever. But maybe that's the point. Maybe through his exhaustion, through his cracks, we see something even more divine. The reminder that even the strongest believers need grace too. And maybe that's the most powerful part of all this. The reminder that even the man portraying Jesus still needs saving, still needs mercy, still needs rest. Jonathan Roumie has become a symbol for faith, for devotion, for what surrender really looks like. But when the lights go off, when the makeup fades and the cameras stop rolling, he's just a man trying to make sense of a calling that never lets him breathe. The robe might come off, but the weight doesn't. He's the face of Jesus for millions. Yet he's still searching for his own peace. Still learning how to separate the divine from the human, the purpose from the pain. And honestly, that's what makes his journey so real. Because what he's going through isn't just acting fatigue, it's spiritual fatigue. It's the kind of tired that comes when you've carried something sacred for too long. Without putting it down, you can see it in his recent words, how his tone has shifted. He's more introspective now, more cautious. Like someone who's seen too much light and too much shadow all at once. He once said, faith isn't something you conquer. It's something you fight for daily, and that's exactly what he's doing. Fighting to hold on to the same peace he helps others find. That's the paradox of Jonathan Roumie's life. He's helped millions believe again, but that same mission keeps pushing him to his own edge. Every prayer, every scene, every fan interaction adds to a pressure no one could have prepared him for. Because when the world looks at you and sees holiness, it's almost impossible to be human without disappointing someone. And yet, he's still trying to be both a man and a messenger. There's something deeply poetic about that. The very role that made him famous is also the one that tests his faith the hardest. But maybe that's why God chose him in the first place. Not because he's perfect, but because he's not. Because he understands the ache, the doubt, the exhaustion. Because his imperfections make the message real. And even now, in his weariness, you can tell he's still guided by the same simple prayer that started it all. Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. It's what brought him out of darkness once. And maybe it's what's keeping him afloat now. He's not trying to be untouchable anymore. He's just trying to be honest, and that honesty is what keeps people watching, believing. Connecting. That Jonathan Roumie's story has always been about surrender, not success, not celebrity, not comfort. And this moment right now, this fatigue he's facing, is just another chapter of that same surrender. He's learning that it's okay to be tired. It's okay to step back, to not have all the answers. To admit that the calling that blesses you can also break you. That's not weakness. That's faith in motion. Because true faith doesn't mean you never fall, it means you keep getting up, even when you're exhausted. And maybe that's what makes Jonathan different from every other actor who's ever played Jesus. He's not pretending to be divine, he's wrestling with what it means to carry divinity in a world that constantly pulls you away from it. So yeah, Jonathan Roumie might be tired of being Jesus, but not in the way people think. He's not tired of the role. He's tired of the noise around it. He's tired of the expectations, the endless pedestal, the idea that he has to live like the man he portrays. Because deep down, he knows he never could, and that's exactly why he's perfect for it. His humanity is what makes the role powerful. His weariness is what makes it real. Every tear, every sleepless night, every prayer whispered in silence, that's where the truth lives. That's where faith breathes, and as The Chosen moves toward its most heartbreaking chapters, maybe this is the season where Jonathan Roumie finally finds his own redemption too. Not through fame, not through applause, but through rest, through learning to let go again. The same way he did years ago when he had $20 to his name and nothing left but faith. Full circle. The same man who once prayed, "Jesus, take care of everything," is still whispering it now, but with a heavier voice and a deeper understanding. Because the more you carry the cross, the more you realize even the strongest souls get tired. But that's when grace steps in. And maybe that's exactly where Jonathan Roumie is right now, in the quiet space between exhaustion and grace, still holding on, still believing, still surrendering.